A woman is alone in the house when her strict, distant mother-in-law suddenly passes away. While dealing with the shock, she finds a sealed letter hidden in the woman's old chest. The letter reveals a decades-long family secret that flips everything she thought she knew about her husband, their marriage, and the family fortune. What starts as a quiet moment turns into a storm of revelations, betrayal, and redemption. The house was unnaturally quiet that evening. Not the comforting kind of silence, but the sort that clings to the walls, heavy and cold. I remember standing at the bottom of the staircase, staring up, half expecting to hear her voice calling my name the way she always did, sharp, demanding, impossible to ignore. But there was nothing, just the ticking clock in the hallway and the faint hum of the fridge. She was gone. My mother-in-law had taken her last breath earlier that day while I was alone in the house. She had always been a complicated woman. Proud, distant, with a way of looking at me that made me feel like I was constantly being tested. For years, we had lived under the same roof but never truly shared the same space. Her presence filled every corner. Even after she passed, it still felt like she was watching me, judging me. I walked into her room slowly, as if I was entering forbidden territory. The air was different in there, stale, scented faintly of her favorite perfume, mixed with the bitterness of old medicine. The curtains were half drawn, letting a soft beam of light cut through the dimness. Her bed was perfectly made, the way she always kept it, like she had planned for her absence. On the nightstand lay her reading glasses and a glass of water she'd never finish. I don't know why I opened her closet. Maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper. It was filled with the same neatly arranged clothes, the same rows of shoes, everything in order. And then, tucked behind a stack of folded sweaters, I saw a small wooden box. It wasn't locked, but it felt personal, almost sacred. I hesitated. For years, she had guarded her belongings fiercely, never letting anyone touch a thing. And here I was, standing alone, holding something she had clearly hidden away. When I opened the box, inside was a sealed envelope, thick, yellowed with age, and addressed in her handwriting. My name was written across it. My hands trembled. Why would she leave me a letter? She barely spoke to me kindly when she was alive. I sat on the edge of her bed, staring at it, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I thought about putting it back, pretending I'd never seen it. But something in the way my name was written, deliberate, final, pulled me in. I slid my finger under the flap and slowly opened it. The paper inside was folded carefully, like it had been waiting for this moment for years. The first line made me freeze. I know the truth has been buried for too long. I read it again, unsure if I understood. She continued, "You believe you know this family. But everything you've been told, everything you've trusted, has been a carefully built lie." I felt my chest tighten. What was she talking about? She had never been dramatic or sentimental. She was cold, precise, and brutally honest. If she had written these words, they meant something. My eyes raced down the page. She wrote about the day she first met me, how she didn't approve, how she had tried to keep her distance, but also how she had seen something in me, something she hadn't wanted to admit. She mentioned my husband, her son, how he had grown up believing a story that wasn't real. And then, buried between her carefully chosen sentences, came the first revelation. The man you married is not who he thinks he is. I stopped breathing for a moment. The walls of the room seemed to close in. I looked around as if someone might appear and tell me this was a joke. But the letter was real. Her handwriting was real. And the words burned like fire. She described a night, years before my husband was born, when a choice was made that changed everything. A decision made out of desperation, fear, and loyalty. She had kept the truth locked away, even from him. And now, she had chosen to tell me first. Not him. Me. The letter continued, each line more unsettling than the last. She wrote about an inheritance that wasn't supposed to belong to him. A name that had been changed. A family feud that had been buried beneath forced smiles and quiet dinners. And then she mentioned someone else. A name I didn't recognize. "If you are reading this," she wrote, It means I couldn't fix what I broke. But you can. I held the letter tighter. My hands were shaking, not just from fear, but from the weight of what I was reading. It was as if she had passed me a bomb wrapped in paper. There was a sudden creak in the hallway. My head snapped up. The house was supposed to be empty. For a second, I thought it was my imagination. But then I heard it again, a slow, deliberate step. My heart pounded in my throat. I folded the letter quickly, shoved it back into the envelope, and hid it under the mattress. I walked out into the hallway, every sense on high alert. The light in the corridor flickered faintly. "Hello." My voice came out smaller than I expected. No reply, just silence. I stepped toward the staircase and noticed something on the floor near the front door. A black envelope. It hadn't been there before. I picked it up carefully. No name, no stamp, just my address written in plain block letters. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single photograph. It was old, creased, black and white. My mother-in-law stood beside a man I had never seen before. Behind them, a house that didn't belong to this family. On the back of the photo, in the same handwriting as the letter, were 3 words: "Find the truth." I felt the blood drain from my face. Whatever secret she had carried wasn't small. It wasn't just a hidden emotion or a personal confession. It was something bigger, something that involved people outside these walls. The ticking clock in the hallway sounded louder. Each second pulled me deeper into a story I hadn't asked to be part of. I looked back toward her room. The letter waited under the mattress, full of answers I wasn't sure I was ready to face. But one thing was clear: this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, wide awake, the letter hidden beneath the mattress and the black envelope resting on the nightstand like a silent threat. My mind kept replaying those 3 words on the back of the photograph. Find the truth. Her handwriting haunted me more than her voice ever had. By morning, the house felt different. Colder. As if the walls themselves knew something I didn't. I went back to her room, shut the door, and pulled the letter out again. I read it slowly this time, word by word, searching for details I'd missed. There were dates, hints about people I didn't know, and a mention of a property outside the city. A place she referred to as where it all began. I turned the photograph over again. The house in the background wasn't familiar, but there was a signboard barely visible behind them. I zoomed in on my phone, tracing each blurry letter until finally, a name emerged. Waverly Street. I didn't know the address, but it was enough to start. I waited until noon before I left. My husband was still away on business. He had no idea what I'd found. I wasn't ready to tell him. Not until I understood what this all meant. As I drove, the city gave way to narrow roads and quiet neighborhoods. Waverly Street turned out to be a row of old houses, most of them abandoned, their paint chipped and windows boarded. But then I saw it, the house from the photograph. It stood at the end of the lane, surrounded by overgrown bushes. The same structure, the same crooked fence, but older now. The windows were covered in dust. The door creaked as I pushed it open. It wasn't locked. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of wood and thyme. Dust floated in the sunlight like tiny ghosts. Every step echoed through the empty rooms. Old furniture covered with sheets, walls yellowed with age. It felt like stepping into a memory that wasn't mine. I made my way through the hallway until I found a small study. A wooden desk sat in the center, papers scattered across it. But it wasn't the papers that caught my eye. It was a drawer that was slightly open. Inside, there was another envelope. This one was unsealed. My hands hesitated for a moment before I pulled it out. It wasn't a letter. It was a birth certificate. I stared at the name written on it. Not my husband's. Someone else's. But the date of birth was the same as his. My heart started racing. I flipped through more papers. Medical records. Adoption forms. All signed by her. And then, tucked beneath them, a faded photograph of a newborn baby in her arms. My husband had never mentioned any of this. She had raised him as her own, never telling him the truth. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed behind me. I froze. I wasn't supposed to be here. I turned around slowly, my breath caught in my throat. A man stood in the doorway, mid-50s tall, with sharp eyes that studied me like he'd been expecting this moment. "You shouldn't be here," he said calmly. "Who are you?" My voice trembled. "I could ask you the same," he replied. "But I already know." His words sent a chill down my spine. He stepped forward, not threatening, but confident. "She finally told someone, didn't she?" I didn't answer. He sighed, almost as if relieved. "I knew this day would come. She kept the secret for too long." I clutched the envelope in my hand. "Tell me what happened." He walked to the desk, ran his fingers over the dust. "She wasn't supposed to raise him. The arrangement was different. But she changed everything. She wanted to protect him. From us. From what this family really is." "Who are you?" I repeated. His eyes met mine. His real uncle. The last person she wanted near him. I felt dizzy. The house, the letters, the photograph. Everything started forming a picture I wasn't sure I wanted to see. "Why now?" I whispered. "Because she's gone," he said simply. "And she left you to finish what she started. She trusted you more than anyone else. Which means she saw something in you, even if she never said it out loud." His words hit me like a wave. She had chosen me. Me, the one she barely spoke to with warmth. I looked down at the papers in my hands. "What happens if I keep digging?" He leaned closer, his voice low. "You'll find the truth, but it might destroy everything you think you know." Before I could respond, he stepped back and walked toward the door. "Be careful," he said, without turning around. "You're not the only one looking." And just like that, he was gone. I stood alone in that dusty room, clutching the birth certificate, my heart pounding. Questions swarmed in my head. Why had she chosen me? What kind of danger was he talking about? And who else knew? When I returned home, evening had already fallen. The house felt different again. I locked the door behind me and sat at the kitchen table with all the documents spread out. The truth was no longer a distant idea. It was here, in front of me, written in ink and sealed by years of silence. I knew I couldn't keep this to myself much longer. My husband deserved to know. But how do you tell someone that their entire identity has been a lie? That the woman who raised them built their life on a carefully crafted secret? As I stared at the letter again, a realization crept over me. She hadn't just left me a message. She had left me a mission. And whether I wanted it or not, I was already too deep to turn back. Outside, a car slowed down near the house. Headlights washed over the curtains. I moved quietly toward the window. A dark sedan sat at the curb. Someone was inside, watching. When I stepped closer, the car drove off slowly, disappearing into the night. A shiver ran down my spine. She was right. This wasn't over. And now, I wasn't just uncovering the truth. I was part of it.